this is Lisa with Holland Designs Crochet. Today I'm going to create a demo of a pattern I designed a year ago. This is the American Moss Afghan square. So you can use this pattern to create squares and then join them together into an Afghan. So I'm just going to demonstrate a few of the rounds as you begin the square. So we begin with a chain 4 and then join with a slip stitch in the 4th chain from the hook to create a ring. And then from there we begin with a chain 3. And that chain 3 counts as a double crochet plus a chain 1 in between the stitches we're doing here. So that's why we start with a chain 3. And then we work a double crochet into the ring and chain 1. And we do that 7 times total. So that's my second double crochet and chain 1, my third, four, it's number 5, number 6, and then my last repetition, number 7, ending with a chain 1. And then we're told to join with a slip stitch in the 2nd chain of the beginning chain 3. So we just simply slip stitch into that 2nd chain, and that completes round 1 of the pattern. And the stitch count is given as well, and it does say the beginning chain 3 counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. So we have a total of 8 double crochet and 8 chain 1s. So just double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then there's a chain 1 in between each of those. So when you're working this pattern, just make sure that you're paying attention to the stitch count. Obviously, if you had too many stitches to begin or not enough, then the rows that follow would not work out correctly. So just make sure you have 8 double crochets and 8 chain 1s for round 1. Now for round 2, we are told to slip stitch in the next chain 1 space. So we simply move our hook by doing a slip stitch there, and then we chain 3 and double crochet in the same space. Chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, V-stitch in the next chain 1 space, and a V-stitch is defined in this pattern in the special stitches as a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So I'll just explain to you that we're basically creating 4 corners on this round. So we're beginning to create a square. So at the beginning of the pattern we had this chain 3 and a double crochet in the same space. That was basically counting as our first V-stitch of the round, or the first corner. Then we did a chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, then we did our V-stitch in that corner. So then we continue, there's a repetition there in the parentheses. We continue there with a chain 1, double crochet in next chain 1 space, chain 1, and then we continue to repeat, which is what it says there in the parentheses, V-stitch in the next chain 1 space. Again, that's our 3rd corner of the square. And then chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and we do that one more time. So we do our V-stitch in this corner. That's our 4th corner. Chain 1, double crochet in the next chain 1 space, and chain 1 to end the row and that round. And we end then with the joining slip stitch in the 2nd chain of the beginning chain 3. So that's the completion of round 2. We've got 12 double crochets total and 12 chain 1 spaces, but as you can see, it's also 4 V-stitch corners. If you pull it a little bit, you can see the square beginning to form. So that's the end of round 2. All right, round 3. Again, we slip stitch in the next chain 1 space, which is the first corner, and we do a chain 3 and double crochet in the same space. That again counts as our first V-stitch corner of this round 3. Then we do chain 1, skip 1 double crochet, so we're skipping this one here, and double crochet into the next double crochet 2 rows below. So we've skipped this one. The next double crochet 2 rows below is the one directly below this chain space here. So we double crochet into the actual top of that double crochet, and that is beginning to create that moss stitch effect. So you can see that we've done that. We're working over the top of round 2. And we said it's told in the repetition here to do that particular step twice. So again, chain 1, skip next double crochet, and double crochet into the top of the double crochet 2 rows below. So that's this one here. You can see again that moss effect beginning to appear. And then the pattern says to chain 1, skip 1 double crochet, so it means this one here we're skipping, and we're working a V-stitch in the next chain 1 space. So this is the corner V-stitch, and then we just continue in that same manner around. So the repetition is given there in the parentheses, and so we are just doing chain 1, skip 1 double crochet into the next double crochet 2 rows below, chain 1, skip this stitch, work into this one, again chain 1, skip this double crochet, work into the corner chain 1, work a V-stitch there, chain 1, skip this stitch, work into this double crochet 2 rows below, chain 1, skip the next double crochet, work into the next one 2 rows below, chain 1, work our V-stitch in the corner, chain 1, skip the next double crochet into the next stitch 2 rows below, chain 1, skip this one, double crochet into this stitch here, chain 1, and that's the end of that round. So we come back to the beginning of the round, again join with a slip stitch in the top of, the second chain of the beginning chain 3. So that's the end of round 3. You can see we've begun to do that moss stitch effect. We have a total of 16 double crochets and 16 chain 1s. So I'll just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 double crochets, and there's a chain 1 between each of those, so we know we have this correct. You can see it's a nice little square shape there on the end of round 3. Okay, as we continue with pattern and move on to round 4, it's very much similar to what we did on round 3. We just have more stitches. So I'll just demonstrate it for you again. Round 4, slip stitch into that chain 1 at the corner, chain 3, and double crochet in the same space to form our first V-stitch of the corner. And then chain 1, skip this double crochet into the next double crochet 2 rows below, chain 1. So we repeat that 3 times across this side. So you can see this is the same sort of repetition that we did on the previous round. So we've got 3 of those moss stitch double crochets along that side. Chain 1, skip this double crochet here, work our V-stitch into the corner, and then do the same thing along the other 3 sides. Again, skip this double crochet, work into the next double crochet 2 rows below. Do that 3 times across this side. So this is very similar to a granny square construction, obviously, but we're just using V-stitches for the corners and this American moss stitch technique for the actual stitching, rather than like shell stitches, which you'd have in a granny square. I'm using a Aran worsted weight yarn, or size 4 yarn, and a K hook, which is the same weight of yarn and hook size that I used in the sample that I made last year. And that sample was done in more of a multicolored blue type of yarn, and so it's nice to see it in just a natural color too, get a real clear look at the stitches. And I hope this demo is helpful to anyone who needed to see it done to get a better understanding of the placement. So this is obviously a different stitch technique than a typical moss stitch in crochet. So this is an American moss stitch. This is something a little bit different, something I came up with last year. So I created this stitch. I used a stitch to create like an actual Afghan, just worked in rows, and then also I created the squares. So it's nice to have more than one way to use that technique. So that is the end of round 4. And of course, the actual round itself, you can see all the open chain 1 spaces, but you can see as we're filling in, do you see how we're getting that lovely American moss stitch dense texture here? So the square isn't going to be as holy as it is here. It's going to actually be nice and a dense fabric like that. So that's the end of round 4, and I'll show you the next round as well. I've just completed round 6 of the pattern. So my stitch count currently is 28 double crochets and 28 chain 1 spaces. So along each of the 4 sides, we have 1, 2 at the corner, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a total of 7 per side. Times 4, we have 28 stitches. And I'll just continue on then and work the final round of the square. This is round 7. So every round is exactly the same as what I already demonstrated on rounds 3 and 4. Exact same stitching, just every time you go around you have 1 additional repetition along each side of the chain 1 and double crochet 2 rows below. So that's how the increasing happens on each round as your square enlarges. So when we get to our final round, round 7, we should have 8 double crochets along each side, and with 4 sides we have 8 times 4, giving us a total of 32 double crochets and 32 chain 1s in our stitch count. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we know we're doing that correctly. And so I'll just complete this square and show you what it looks like when it's done. So the actual pattern, I do have a total of 7 rounds in the written pattern, but you can also enlarge the squares. So if you decide to work extra rounds, 8, 9, or 10 rounds, you can definitely do that, and you just follow the exact same method and increase the size of your squares. So the actual sample squares, they were, I believe, approximately 6 inches wide. So you can just double check how wide your squares are and see if you want to make them larger, add more rounds to them. So you can see it's quite a pretty stitch, and quite a nice softness as well, not too heavy, and works up very quickly. So the actual pattern is quite easy to memorize and works up quickly. Just a matter of minutes, really. I hadn't timed myself, but I think I could easily sit down and complete a square in about 30 minutes or less, especially once you have the pattern memorized. And the joining method that I chose for these is simply a whip stitch, so using a yarn needle, sewing them together after the fact. You can try other joining methods. There are other ways of joining squares, and you can look on YouTube and find videos on different ways to join squares. But I just chose that particular joining method for these squares, so I wouldn't have any noticeable seams. And the nice thing with squares is you can work them up, you know, even when you're traveling, or you can sit down and complete one square and then set the project aside and come back to it later. So anyway, that's the completed square, and you can see how it's very pretty, especially even just in a nice neutral color. And yes, I love the look of this American moss stitch. So give this a try, and hopefully if you just pay attention to the stitch counts and you make sure that you've started correctly with the correct number, as you continue, it'll continue to be correct. When I talked about enlarging the squares, I think that should work for a few more rounds. Whether or not it would work for a full-size blanket, just worked in a square, I don't know for sure if it would lay neatly or be as square as you'd want it to be, but you could try to see if you wanted to keep going and see how square it is and how it lays. You might just need to shape your finished squares or shape your blanket a little, but give it a try and see how it looks. I hope that you enjoy working this pattern. I hope this video has been helpful for you if you were struggling to get your stitch counts correct or find the placement. So I would always recommend working it in a lighter colored yarn as well, rather than trying to do it when you're first learning. If you use a darker colored yarn, it might be a little bit hard to see. So give it a try, and I hope that you really enjoy this pattern.